Good evening, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives. And it's a Friday evening, 8 p.m. here on the East Coast of the United States. And we're welcoming once again our good friend, Professor Hamamoto from the West Coast of the United States to get back together with us and have another conversation, which I have never ever had such a wild conversation as I do with Professor Hamamoto. We we go here, we go there, we go everywhere, and somehow it all seems to tie together by the end. Uh, it's pretty cool. Anyway, let's see where we go tonight. How are you feeling, and how are things in California?
I'm doing well. It's warming up. It's going to be a hot, hot summer. And yeah, we're going to have another one of our wild conversations. Because if you look in the dictionary under wild, you'll see my picture there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I seen that picture. Yeah, I've seen.
Now, John,
I
can
know
I can
that.
I start out insulting one of your recent guests?
No, that's
No?
not allowed. Are
Okay.
you gonna? Are you serious? Are you really
Out
gonna?
of respect to you, I will not do it. But it's not about you or the guest. It's just about uh, journalistic credibility, which I think is a big issue. So, but if you don't want to talk about it, that's okay. And that's, you know, I'm not a Russia-phile especially, but I am in touch with currents of world political importance. And as such, I will read Alexander Dugin.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
this is
so you
his,
want to talk? We
yeah.
can talk about Alexander Dugin. That's
Well,
fine.
what really, Dugan's okay. He's got about a dozen books in English, and I'm just shocked that Riley Wagaman said I'm not really a Dugan, person. Like he's down in
Well,
Georgia, which is, it's cool, and he lived in Russia, and he's got a Russian wife, and so I didn't know if it was just because of the touchiness of the current political
no,
climate.
no, no. I think he was quite genuinely saying he just not a much of a Dugin guy. But there's a lot of good Dugin scholars in Russia, and he's not one of them. So that's all I think
Yeah,
he was
but you
saying.
don't even have to be a scholar. But I'll make it quick. I did a whole show on pop-up pundits a while back, and so I started looking into Riley Wagaman. It's not about him; it's about pop-up pundits. And I her name is
Let's not
Whitney
make it
Webb.
about Riley then, because I have a deep respect for Riley,
Oh,
and
okay, well,
I don't want to end up making him
no, 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 no,
involved in
definitely not.
you know.
I'll just make it short then. He comes out of the same bag as Whitney Webb. He's one of the writers for.
No,
uh,
he does not.
no, it's on the
No,
website. It says
he
unlimited
is.
hangout. It says
What are
writers,
you
and he's
talking
there.
about?
I just checked it today, John. But we don't have to talk
Eh,
about it. I'll tell you
No,
what happened. I'll tell you why
no.
this is such
All
a.
right, look. No, I'm going to go there. Okay.
No,
Unlimited Hangout, right? Is it like .com or what?
I don't know. Yeah,
But
that's
but you
the.
say that he is listed as a writer on
Yeah, yeah,
Unlimited Hangout,
yeah.
which
There's
I
about
think
a
is
half a
the
dozen of
Whitney
them.
Webster.
That's a Whitney web operation.
Okay, so if she published some articles that he wrote, does that
No,
mean
no.
that
He's looks.
he
It looks
agrees
like
with
it looks
everything
like
that
a
she
staff.
says?
He's a staff. A staff writer.
Well, I without him here, we're not going to have this conversation.
Okay. All right. That's fine.
No, I mean,
No,
if you if
and
you if you want to clarify
I'll tell you the
something
reason
about
why I'm
Riley
very
Wagman, you ought to look. Let's ask him. But no,
okay, I
I'm not
will.
accepting the comparison of Riley to the work of Whitney Webb or anyone else. I think he's a unique and very talented man.
And if he's presenting himself as a Russia expert, he should know who
He's not
Alexander
presenting
Dugin
himself.
is. Yeah,
He
I mean,
does
I'm not
know
an
who
expert.
Alexander Dugin is.
Hmm?
What? Of course, he knows who Alexander Dugin is.
I mean, there's a great book.
I
It's
didn't know who Alexander Dugin was until maybe a month or two ago, and I started reading about him
okay.
in another person's work, and that is the writer Livingstone. David Livingstone with the
Yeah, I'm
EOS,
familiar with his work as well.
and he has a great deal of depth about Alexander Dugin. Very interesting
Yeah.
perspective. But you see, that's what you can't expect everybody to be deep in everything. And so I don't think that it's a fair criticism.
Okay. Well, I hope that some of your viewers will follow up if they're interested in in a situation that looks like could be a very serious, not just regional shoot 'em up, but a world war. And that's why I'm adamant about pushing the issue because this is not simply a discussion about you know something hypothetical. If you look on YouTube, and I'm sure you have, you will see the massive carnage that's unfolding daily
Oh, I do.
in
I
this
watch it. I
war.
watch it every day. I'm
Yeah,
kind of an addict to. I have three war reports that I watch just about every day,
yeah,
and I'm very aware of the horrible carnage over there. And if there's anything we can do to contribute to peace over there, that's very interesting to me. I
okay,
am happy to talk about Dugan as much as I know, but again, I'm not an expert, but I've read a
yeah.
little bit at this point.
Well, I don't know how you can handle it because I've seen some of the footage, and those probably the same channels that you're watching, and it's too gruesome for me to watch. I mean, it's very graphic. I'm surprised that it even gets on YouTube because
Oh,
they
no,
they will.
I'm not watching the graphic stuff. I'm just watching the maps,
Oh, okay.
these guys do use incredible maps. Can you imagine? But they do reinforce it with little bitty video clips. But on
Uh-huh.
YouTube, you can't show anything that involves somebody getting killed or death or blood or any of that. So they excise all of that. But you do see tanks getting blown up, and you do
Okay.
see big platoons of guys run by, and then all of a sudden there's this huge explosion. But
Mhm.
so it is graphic in a sense, but it's not the kind of thing that is overly such. It's more about maneuvers and who's got an advantage here, and when is the world's greatest counteroffensive that's been advertised since February? When is that going to start? And supposedly it
Mhm.
has started, but they're not getting very far. But then again, the the interesting story is really how very important the media spin is. I mean,
Mhm.
they're throwing thousands and thousands of guys' lives away just to get some little bitty village so they can say, "Hey, we won this village," and then the I guess the funding keeps coming as long as they have something they can say they won. I'm talking
Yeah.
about on the Ukrainian side. Russian side is it's not that complicated. I mean, they've dug in. They've been digging in for a year now, and they've got some pretty deep defenses. So for the Ukrainians to think they're going to take back all of that territory, I think
Mhm.
it's going to take years, and it's going to take NATO forces. And I am very concerned about the Zaporizhzhia power plant in the sense that somebody, one side or the other, is going to pull a false flag and blame the other side. And then, it's the first casualty of war is the truth. So who's ever going to know who actually blew it up? But
Mhm.
they're crazy. They are so insanely at war right now that is I can't put it past them. It's
Well,
really.
in favor of Riley Wagaman's reportage, and I've been looking at his material apart from your show, right?
I'll
Because
bet on. Have you watched this? Have you looked at his Substack?
yeah, I've been reading the material, and because I like to check out who the sources are, who the players are, not just on the
You got to admit
battlefield.
he's a very clever writer.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
he's a
yeah,
clever
but
writer.
let's keep
Gotta,
him out of the discussion since you don't want to go there. I do agree with him that there
what's that?
is the most troublesome aspect of because you're talking about the reportage of it, the reportage, even the people who are supposedly on a professional level, like RT, Russia Today, is that it's just like a personality, right? Ukraine bad or Ukraine good, Russia bad. It's just sort of like a polarity there. Really simplistic, even amongst supposedly sophisticated commentators, but I've been, following Putin a long time before Dugin. I didn't know that Dugin was a professor at Moscow State University and later came to be known as Putin's brain. That's a pretty important label or access to that. But I was looking at Putin long before I even knew that there was this brain trust behind him. I don't know how strong that is. I'm not really. I think he does have access to the highest reaches, including Putin's people, who I don't really know who they are at this point. Right? We're being thrown all kinds of different mixed signals here, and that might be part of the strategy. But I think it's important to recognize that Putin does have, and again, there may not be a smoking gun, but there's a lot of evidence that points in the direction of Vladimir Putin. But he does have a record of going after political enemies, high profile as well as secondary enemies that we've never even heard about. And I mention that because of the recent, and again, I don't know if it was real or not, defection or traitor act of betrayal that Putin experienced recently. It was all in news, and everybody, even the experts, supposedly were mystified at what happened. But I recall reading a book by a woman reporter. This is a real reporter, put her life on the line, and she was murdered outside her apartment. I think in the vestry or outside the elevator. Her name's Anna Politskovskaya. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name right, but she had at least two books written in English, published in English. And again, maybe it's by in order to defame Putin and the whole enterprise there. But it's called Putin's Russia, and that, at least to my satisfaction, I can say can be laid, the death, the assassination can be laid at the foot of the FSB or Putin or somebody that he might have hired, subcontract to do it, because there were 3 Chechens who were later exonerated, by the way, who were accused of the hit job. Now, and I'm saying this because we're going to probably see some bodies starting to appear in places like Paris or London or maybe Palm Beach. Who knows? High level profile people, right? And such a person is Litvinenko, who, and this gets into your bailiwick, John, when you're following the radiological, bacteriological, bioweapon complex here. And this is really what I wanted to turn to, and that is the use of polonium-12 as a assassination tool. Is Litvinenko coming up there? I think this was in 2009 or 2006, perhaps. I'm not sure exactly.
I was just going to try it and how to spell it. Is it L-E-V?
L-I-V. But anyway, the point is he was eating at a sushi restaurant in London. I don't think that's a good idea in general. I don't think you should eat sushi where there's no ocean, especially in London. But that's not the point. The point is that he started having these symptoms of indigestion, and he died fairly quickly of polonium poisoning. And that's undisputable. Even his detractors and all the people on the different side of the PSYOP said, yeah, he died of polonium-12 poisoning. And that he's in the Guinness Book of World Records, by the way, if you care to check, as being the first victim ever of assassination by polonium-12. So the point I'm trying to make here is that if these bodies start rolling up, I think that's probably what they're going to be using, because it can be targeted. So in checking out this the bodies, the people who have died and probably will start showing up again, I did find a lot of interesting articles that trace the history, the first use of polonium. And then indeed, it traces back to the same general constellation of institutions, not just in the US, by the way, who are engaged in all these different types of nuclear weapons, grand and small, and biowarfare weapons. Polonium-12, that is the meme of the day as we wind down from Pride Month, right? We have all these fascinating world historical transformations taking place while we're being distracted by, well, you've talked about it in your show, so we don't need to go through that again. So,
Well,
as an
you want to talk about
alternative, people do want to read about it. This guy's been in the news because he was swapped, not Estelin, but Victor Boat was swapped. It was traded. There was a prisoner exchange. And I went back to Daniel Estelin. He's a name that's been kind of forgotten, unfortunately, but he's a boots on the ground reporter himself. People associated him with his book on the Bilderberg, which is okay. It's a decent book, but I think his better, more incisive books, first person reportage, especially with the intrigue in Russia and people who are the middlemen and the arms traders, the CBW type shadow characters, including Victor Boot, by the way, the chapters including the economic rape of Russia, the Bilderberg War in Kosovo, right? Bilderberg we know about, underbelly of Disney. So this is the one to go for. And it also reminded me that I need to see what his recent books. I haven't uncovered these yet. And one is Transevolution: The Coming Age of Human Deconstruction, Daniel Estelin. These are journalists I respect. These are people who publish books. And by the way, it's the same author, Trying Days, Whitney Webb. When I went to go look at Whitney Webb, it was out of a sense of solidarity and support of a fellow author for the same imprint. And then my friend and colleague, who does write on Substack as well, by the way, I have a subscription, as well as does a lot of Twitter reportage and has written numerous books about the Epstein case and beyond, right up into present. She did a follow-up, and I didn't talk to her about it. She did an extensive investigation of who this person is. And I will ask anybody who, not on this show, but at your own leisure, to look in my playlist to see that workup I did on it. And I got a lot of flack for it because everybody has picked up sides. It's political leader A, good. Political leader, bad. And these are people who are sophisticated. And as you remember, I said, this sounds really familiar. It sounds like a McCann Erickson psyop. That's an advertising agency. I don't know if they've probably been absorbed by now. And I don't know if you remember this, John, since we're coming up to the 4th of July when we drink a lot of beer and shoot off fireworks and eat hot dogs. But remember the beer commercial? Was it Miller Lite? Tastes good, less filling? You know, that was really the signal moment where we were being instructed to identify, to make very complex and political events into product evaluations, consume. So we're consuming Putin, we're consuming whoever the villain or the hero of the month might be, including Biden, right? There's a lot of unnecessary focus on him, and it's coming from, quote unquote, our side, right? We don't even have to worry about CNN or Fox News anymore. Most of the pop-up punditry and the really terrible misrepresentation and simplification and ronification is showing up on YouTube. You're one of the last bastions of. You're doing shows just about every day, right? I'm only down to 1 week, but if you look at it, it's mostly people who are non or underemployed actors or retooled comedians who are reporting really, really serious issues. And it's alarming. But the thing is that they have millions, and it's not because I have low subscriptions. I really don't care about that. But these people have millions and millions of people who are getting the oxygen sucked out of their news world. Now, there's an exception to that. Most of them are retail comedians, including Joe Rogan, all the way down the food chain. But the exception seems to be a guy named Randy Credico, who was a comedian to the point where he was, I think it was on a Tonight Show, a 27-year-old, pretty young, rising star. And he, in his monologue on the Tonight, I think it was the Tonight Show, compared Jean Kirkpatrick, right, who was Secretary of the State, compared her to Ava Braun or something. He was never invited. His career was ruined. But recently, and he's an American, I think he lives in New York, he has been told to lay low because there's a hit out for him. He's appearing on a hit list here. So if there's nothing else that I'm communicating here, is that journalism and writing is a really serious business. And if you're not willing to die for it, then you shouldn't be on the playing field, right? And definitely you should not be sucking the oxygen out of the news information and analysis biosphere, right? It's that serious. And we're going to see, and this is a bit of news as no one's obviously heard, I guess. Randy Credico, check him out. There are going to be some of these independent journalists who are going to start winding up like Litvinenko, I assume, because polonium-12 is the seems to be the weapon of choice now.
Well, sorry to hear that. That's a terrible way to die. It's a poison that's been known a long time. I think it was Marie Curie that actually discovered it, and it's named after Poland, polonium. And so along with radium, the first radioactive elements that they were able to study, and boy, a lot of people got sick from studying radium. Yeah, and I think it is probably a very convenient way to kill, especially if you can do it and get away with it. Who would know? And without an autopsy, nobody would ever know. I suspect that it's been done before when we never knew about it. It's a terrible way to die, I'm sure, by radiation poisoning. I have. Alexander Dugin talks about reinvigorating a Russian-centered empire, an imperial presence that is the kind of the center of the land island that Mackinder talks about. That Europe represents this land island, and who controls the central Eurasia controls the world, and so. He I think is connected, believe it or not, to Zbigniew Brzezinski, and I think of Zbigniew Brzezinski as the guy who is like prompted the Mujahideen to rise in Afghanistan. He's the same guy that I think is pushing Dugin to say, let's reinvigorate, ancient Russian Empire. In other words, it's trying to get these guys to take up a nationalistic cause, so giving them the idea that there'll be support, that there's a lot of people that are behind this, and kind of like the movie with Tom Hanks and never mind, the one about Charlie Wilson's War. That type of a scenario, right, where the very wealthy but uninformed rich person is going to help finance this nationalist revolution on behalf of these guys, and they say Allahu Akbar, and I think it was a pretty classic scene of the the great white burden gone awry. And that's the thing around the world now. We have so many examples. France is all over the news now. I don't know if you've been following that, but many people have called it to my attention, and I looked a little this afternoon, and yeah, they're out there burning buildings, burning down police stations, and I mean, but bigger crowds. I mean, this is not Antifa. This is like thousands and thousands of people out on the street. Much
Mhm.
much more of a European style protest than they've been able to. Anybody's been able to mount here. You know, can you imagine
Yeah.
a French style revolution or march going through Washington D.C. with maybe 50,000 mad people? Uh, I don't think that D.C. would let it happen. They put up the fences.
Well, the Parisians, historically, at least, have proven to be really good at that. They're a month late. They usually like to do it in May with the students, with the schools out, right? And I was, at the home right off of the Pantheon area. Daniel Singer, who was a leftist journalist of international stature, would write for The Nation and whatever, and he covered the attempted revolution of May 1968. And the students were pulling up the cobblestones around the Pantheon area, that whole area, the fifth,
Mhm.
precinct there. And subsequently, though, the city of Paris paved over everything so they could not use the cobblestones as projectiles. And we know about the Bastille, the romanticized stuff, but it's really good to know, and we know about the yellow vests more recently. It's good to know that popular resistance is still possible in 2023, despite all the hype we're being told about on supposedly indie news like the Alex Jones show. I don't know if you're a fan of it, or pick whoever supposedly on our side who produces nothing but fear porn saying that resistance is futile. But this is going on. This is going on in 2023. We know January 6th was a setup job. The truth will come out. I don't know if these individuals are going to spend the rest of a good part of their life in prison or not, or whether they're going to be given pardons. But it's fairly obvious that it was a setup, as we learn more about it, right? But the point is that these national security apparatus people are still very much worried about popular uprising on a physical level, even in the age of supposedly total lockdown, even in the age of post, lockdown, right? The V word. I'm not saying Vatican. I'm
Well,
using the other V word.
it is though, Daryl, the same thing that was drawn just into a simple cartoon, that I saw, and it's this cartoon. I hope you may have seen it. It's made the rounds. It's got the king on his balcony looking out, and there's a crowd of people, and they have their torches and their pitchforks,
Yeah.
and the torches and their pitchforks, and the king is looking like, oh my God, he's scared, and the advisor says to him, no, Your Highness, uh, you don't have to go to war with them. All you have to do is convince the torch people that the pitchfork people are going to take away their torches, and
Brilliant.
then that is divide and conquer, and that is what's going on. If people would just put down their, as I can hear how angry you are about it, and I am too, that people fall into the narrative of one side or the other, and
Yeah.
we've got to step back and say, wait a minute, this is the same old game that they played on us for hundreds and hundreds of years, and say,
Mhm.
no, we can't do that anymore, because what it is, it's playing both ends against the middle, and the middle wins, because
Mhm.
they construct these crazy right wing, fascist, Confederate flag wearing, racist jerks. I mean, these guys nowadays are getting paid $75,000 a year by the FBI. And
Yeah.
I don't think I'm exaggerating. And yet,
No, no.
on the other hand, they also finance these crazy Antifa people and the people on the left to make everything look horrible there. And
Yeah.
then they've got the social media all divided up so that the people on the right only see how horrible the people on the left are, and the people on the left only see how horrible the people on the right are. And so my good friends on the left,
Mm.
instead of looking at the problems that are many on the left, they are completely, fixed on doing nothing but explaining all the latest gossip about what Donald Trump, how long Donald Trump's going to be in jail this time, or all of the things that he's done, and what he's misogynist, and he's all of these terrible things. But there's
Mhm.
no focus on how can we improve our
Yeah.
party to make a more appealable candidate on our side. No, they don't want to talk about that.
Mhm.
Whereas the opposite is also true. I see a glimmer of hope in Bobby Kennedy, although, gosh, I mean, he is a Kennedy, and that's one of the families that's been, part of the mix. And while I love President Kennedy, I and Bobby, and I'm of that generation as you are.
Mhm. Well,
And all we're saying
RFK
was give us
Jr.
a
is we
chance.
can agree on him. I have a strong sentimental as well as rational, affection and affinity to RFK Jr. I'll just state that out front. Um,
And
yeah.
and I'm coming to that myself, especially when we talk about the vaccine issues.
Mhm.
I have seen, so many times in which all the mainstream, everything, and all the mainstream politicians on both parties, the uniparty in the middle. That's what I'm talking about. The middle that controls the two extremes and won't let
Yeah.
the rest of the people have a dialogue. That middle, that's what they do. And as long as we have uh, if there's a candidate that will break through this, uh, what he calls a corrupt FDA. I mean, he's saying, and he says it. He says the FDA has been captured.
Mhm.
It's captured. It's a captured organization. I don't know if he uses the word criminal, but you might as well, because the people that are running it are making criminal decisions, that are
Yeah.
killing and harming millions and millions of people in the interest of some clients of theirs, and not in the interest of the American people by any means. So this is my hope, is that people are going to realize that no, Bobby Kennedy is not just a dummy out there trying to get votes by appealing to the anti-vax Cro-Magnon crowd, the real stupid ones. No, he
Mhm.
is very sophisticated, and you listen to what he says in answer to those questions, as he answered, I think, yesterday, and he's got a strong media presence on Twitter. He's got he's on Rumble like me. So I'm also happy about that. I mean, come on, guys, we all got to get to Rumble, and I think Rumble is the future as far as free speech. So far, I haven't had any trouble at all, and I feel like I can speak freely. So anyway,
Mhm.
I'm glad that we're both very interested in the candidacy of RFK Jr. And I say, mainly, I'm just amazed that this guy can actually stand up there and communicate with people at all levels of education, and can
Yeah.
and make sense, and has just an elegant way of expressing thoughts. I just that's a lot to me.
Yeah.
You don't have an elegant speaker anywhere on the radar screen except for him.
Absolutely. It's a Kennedy political family tradition when, and, I was a kid so I was watching this on TV, live television, and you can just see the way JFK and then later RFK, how they work the crowds.
Yeah,
They, talk about charisma with a capital C. They had it, and it's an important quality. I think it's intangible. You can't really quantify it, but it's really what gets people mobilized, and gets them interested and exciting. And that's why RFK Jr., which is one of the reasons why I like him even talking about being a candidate is it really gives the Democratic establishment conniption fits. He's their worst nightmare. He's a if you look in the dictionary of Democrat, you would see his picture there. So I like that. I like anything that's going to confound the orthodoxy and to break us out of the cognitive tube. That's why I call it Tube U instead of YouTube, because they have us, each of us, as you described just a couple of minutes ago, into these cognitive tubes, thinking that we're
Yeah.
not ever going to realize that we're being played by, well, now it's big tech along with everybody else, right? Big pharma. And but I think people are starting to wise up. And again, my warning is that we have to be careful and leery about, because there's been a mass influx of people who are now independent journalists. I call them the pop-up pundits. They're they have to be watched very carefully, have to be vetted very carefully. That's all I'm arguing. So, as far
Well,
as
we have a lot of new people also, courtesy of the open border policy.
yeah,
And these people, I see that uh, I just saw a headline that New York City has more of these new immigrants uh, than their own homeless population. So they're putting more people from foreign countries up in their shelters than they are New York City homeless.
mhm,
And that's going on all over the place as when they come into a red state, the red state governors tend to send them on to the blue state cities and let them
yeah,
welcome their new voters. Well, the other thing that's coming in though is what really concerns me is it appears that there are men of military age coming in from different countries. I mean, like Chinese people. What are they doing in Mexico?
mhm.
People from that might very well be preparing for some type of military action or preparedness, and
Yeah.
I don't trust Biden to control that. As a matter of fact, I'm really concerned about something happening. They're rattling sabers about Taiwan,
Mhm.
but you know, am I crazy to worry about California? I think I told you in a note earlier that I wanted to ask you about California, and the reason is, first of all, you've got a nutty government. I mean,
Yeah.
and the whole financial system with CalPERS is all tied into the excuse me for saying so, woke investments. It seems as
Yeah.
though the control of the government and the agenda seems to be almost friendly to the Chinese. Um,
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And some of the more sensational examples of that friendliness keep being repeated over and over again. Dianne Feinstein's chauffeur and all that. But it goes much deeper than that. It's been institutionalized at the university. I know this. Tons of money being poured in to create a conduit shaping ideas and future policymakers that's going to be have a multi-generational effect. It's a huge lobby there, and that's probably one of the reasons. When I look back on why I was hired at UC Davis, 25 years ago, whenever it was when I first started, I was going to be a friendly yellow face to kind of run ethnic cover for the People's Republic of China massive investment in the University of California. But I didn't do that. I didn't play the role. I said, hey, what are we doing here? What are they doing there? What is this with the Confucius Institute? Why did this multi-million dollar cross-cultural center building get funded by Chancellor Katehi? And we realized that she had her hands in various cookie jars. I could see that. And I also knew from professionally who all the different agents were, agents of influence, they're called, for the People's Republic of China. And I knew at the street level, in San Francisco in particular, where you had the CPization of Chinatown, and you had gang warfare. It looked like gang warfare on the surface. It was political warfare that was going on. They would use the triads, the street gangs, in order to execute political hits. There's a guy, speaking of Taiwan, he lived in Daly City, which is south of San Francisco. He's a Taiwanese American, right? He's an American citizen. He was murdered right outside of his house, right? That's one of the more sensational examples of that. There's been some speculation on who was behind the hit. I have some good ideas or some strong opinions on that. But this has been going on, and I think it's probably happening right now, right beneath our nose, while the rainbow flag is being waved at the state capitol. But yeah, the Chinese government influence is very strong. But there's also another factor here that's not really being talked about. I think we also got to have to look at Japan. And this is where Putin comes in again, right? Russia is it's an Asian country as well. And they're right on the doorstep of Japan and the Sakhalin, the northern islands, and they have the Kamchatka Peninsula. This is all real estate that that the Soviet Union claimed for itself after World War II. So they're right there. So Japan's kind of laying back and waiting to see what's happening in Moscow with Putin, see if what his strengths are and his weaknesses are. And they're gonna benefit by geopolitically by whatever missteps that Putin might make, and he seems to be in a quite vulnerable position right now. Okay, that's one level, the geopolitical, and also through your research, the guests that you've had previously have talked a lot about I forgot the guy's name. He was the University of Wisconsin. This is doing all the research for the NIH under Fauci's grant-giving protocols. Where I forgot the name. Kawaoka. Yeah, he was at Wisconsin, I believe, and there were other foreign nationals there, but he was the most prominent one. And as soon as it started getting hot, he split. I think he went back to the University of Tokyo. They have maintained a bioweapons program. I wouldn't say continuously, but they picked up where they left off during what they call the Pacific War. Right, we call it World War II, the Pacific World War II. But no one talks about them. It's for Orange Man, it's always the China virus. Or it's the Wuhan virus. It's always China, China, China. Never Japan, because they're an ally. They're an important bulwark. You mentioned Taiwan. The U.S. is going to expect. And I lived in Okinawa for a year, and I know how close it is. Okinawa and Taiwan. Look on the map there to see. They're going to go to war. They're going to. It'll be coming out of Okinawa, the U.S. Marine Corps bases and in the naval fleets, as well as the spy stations, are going to be involved there. Hainan Island, which is north of Taiwan, but that would be probably sort of an intermittent. This is just my snap analysis. I'm not, I might change my mind tomorrow, but that's just going to be a temporary stop. I think in the long term. The decision is already made to sacrifice the chess piece Taiwan.
Right.
Yeah,
What I'm interested in the California politics side of it. You mentioned Feinstein, of course. She doesn't seem to be completely, even awake anymore. But they seem to be able to wheel her in for the votes. But she's a player, of course. But what the heck was Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan for against Biden's apparent wishes? Is there a constituency in California that is still tied to the Taiwanese government and that connection, that web of connections that really goes back to Chiang Kai-shek and the
Yeah.
uh, the opium business with the Soongs that you've written about in your book,
Thank you
or
for mentioning that. Yeah.
or is that already been merged into the Hong Kong Red Chinese HSBC financing? Um, uh, what can you tell us about the 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 different? Are there different groups of California politicians, one supporting Taiwan and one supporting uh, the takeover of Taiwan that seems to be being facilitated by
Mhm.
our policy right now?
Well, it seems to be that the PRC is calling the shots. In the old days, the roles are reversed, right? The People's Republic of China was called Red China, and it was Taiwan, it was Free China that was being promoted. But that's typical Anglo-American politics. There are no permanent friends or alliances. They're just interests, national interest. And the national interest is for, and California is one of the bulwark states, I guess, or leading states in that area, is to fuse, not in the way that Alex Jones is talking about, because I've been to China a few times, and it's a very controlled and tightly controlled, but it's not what you see on Infowars. That's one of the reasons why I keep harping on indie media, because they're just selling us a bunch of anti-Chinese fear porn, which is the indispensable enemy. It goes back to the 1850s, right? And it hasn't changed very much from that. Um, but they've got the money. PRC's got the money. Um, the microchip business is what Taiwan had the hold on that, the monopoly on it, but that's been wrested away. It's been relocated. I think a lot of that work is done on China. So what does Taiwan really have to offer the U.S. so far as a strategic asset anymore?
Dope.
Uh, Very little, except from capital, except maybe their premises for movies like Crazy Rich Asians or something, because there's a lot of money in Taipei, especially concentrated, of course, in few hands. And they have a great film industry. You can get them, strangely enough, on Netflix, which I watch, and they're in translation. They're at international standards. But China has its own film tradition, since we're talking about full spectrum dominance here, which I also watch in translation. So does Japan. But you don't really see that in American media, right? Thank you, John. You're the only person besides John B. Wells on the Caravan to Midnight show that regularly features a yellow person on the show. And we're a country with two borders, and we're facing the Pacific area. But for some reason, they will hire Keanu Reeves or Tom Cruise to be the expert, right? So anyway, they have their own culture. Uh, they have their own popular culture, their own media to rely on, and they don't really. It doesn't really matter if they cast Keanu Reeves in all the Asian roles or Tom Cruise in all the Asian roles, because they don't care. It's a joke to them. Tom Cruise is not the last samurai. Sakamoto Ryoma, those people, those are historical figures that brought modern Japan to the fore. And then China has its own traditions. So does Taiwan, Chiang Kai-shek. Where are those movies? Where are those epics? None. Zero.
Well, they don't give us epics anymore anyway. It's all it's all good guy, bad guy, and monsters, and aliens,
Well,
and gods from the ancient times, but it's all uh, very
yeah,
very little of real character development, stories that, I mean, like, geez, even something as popular and huge as Gone with the Wind. That was a long movie with a lot of character development, and you got to
yeah.
know people and who they are and everything. But I guess I shouldn't even talk because I don't even go to the movies anymore. I am I watch about an hour of television usually every night, and That's it.
Mhm.
And I have to say the only way that I can stay sane, Professor, is to not watch Alex Jones.
Oh, well, yeah.
It helps me to stay sane, and so I don't know, other people who may be suffering from too much AJ-itis might wanna take a break like I have. I don't gain anything from him anymore,
Yeah.
that's what happens to me. I get on and so, no, I don't watch any of it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't read the Washington Post. I look at the New York Times once in a while and more interested in what but no, I do not read those writers anymore, and so I don't get as angry as you do because
Mhm.
I'm not the media person, you are. I'm just really trying to do basic research and draw
Right.
out from my guests as much as I can to help us
Mhm.
understand the big picture, as you know.
Yeah, you're doing a wonderful job at it. I'm just, my agreement is that there's a number of excellent writers that I kind of pop up in my recommended readings on Amazon of all places, and that's the only reason why how I found this person here, if I can recommend, because she does a lot about China from a cultural perspective, not just contemporary punk, named Susan Bradford. She has incredible political as well as journalistic credentials and bona fides, which I respect. Tartar treachery. You mentioned
Uh,
Mackinder and all the
yeah,
geopoliticians or strategists of the past. Well, she takes that. I'm not going to go through a critique of the book, but she also did this. She's very wide-ranging areas of interest. I'm not going to read the subtitle. It's called Unmasked.
mhm.
And there's a picture of, there was a funeral for her not long ago, and then her son took over the family business. Susan Bradford. So there's tons of, to your point, yeah, I think we need to separate us even from the people who are supposedly indie media now. They're the big problem. We should be careful who these people are. We should even detoxify. I don't watch Alex Jones' show except some select samples. But on the bright side, there's tons of people who I'm discovering and rediscovering all the time, and I think that is what is going to get us over the hump. News, information, analysis, discussion from credible sources. I mean, what set off the people? I guess it's the most of the civil disturbances being centered in Paris, right? It's springtime in Paris. There's revolution in the air. What set them off? I want to know what it is, and can we bottle it and bring it to the U.S.?
I wish, but and I did I spend some time studying that question with the work of Sean Ross, and he of course is a native French and a person who has contributed an awful lot of uncovering of the esoteric, the real history for things like the Templars and the
Yeah,
Freemasons, etc. And he says that on the surface they are protesting because of the raising of the retirement age, but that's all you hear in the news. It's not what it really is about. It really is about that they've passed this law. I think it's called Law 49.
mhm,
And what it does is it gives Macron, the president, the kind of almost dictatorial
mhm,
powers. And so he's able to do these things that the people just are very upset about. And it is so is it is an assault on the essence of French democracy.
yeah,
The republic itself, you know, is under attack by the Macron and this is the side that is allied, of course, with the banks and the great financial powers that need to control the people so that they can keep that churn going, that cash flow going,
mhm,
keep them people uh, under control. And it's a different, it is a different world over there from America. Americans don't understand, and I've traveled very little, but I've traveled enough to know that you cannot judge Europeans by American standards. It's just not going to happen. It's a
Mhm.
different. It's just too different, and especially France is like France is France, and America. We think everybody wants to have the same kind of democratic ideals and the that stuff, but the people here in this country have been trained to not to do that. Don't go out on the streets. Uh, Look what happens when they do that. Look at the bonus army in the 1920s when
Mhm.
they came out march. They were broke. They were having a terrible time, and they were promised a bonus and they hadn't got it. They came to march here to ask the Congress, please, give it to us. And the government sent the army out there to burn up the camp and fire upon the protesters who are military veterans from World War I. We
Yeah.
have thousands of examples of our government does not allow that crowd to grow. And I've been to a few manifestations in Washington myself,
Mhm.
but it's always under control. And boy, the last time I was down on the mall, you see the helicopters above. You know that there's snipers on all the buildings. It's just like creepy. Um, it's a different. I don't think that it is that bad in Europe. The people are allowed to go out and at least have the sense that they have power. The
Yeah.
sense of we're all together, we're all singing La Marseillaise and
Mhm.
dreaming of that powerful liberté, égalité, fraternité.
Yeah. Well, definitely the public cultures are different. America's an anomaly.
Yeah,
We're locked in our single family dwellings. Most people in the world go out to eat a lot and they meet because their houses are small, maybe, but they go to a cafe, they eat out, they meet each other in the public and they take public transportation. And so there's different types of sociability around the world. And I think that's the type of sociability that creates revolutions because you're talking. That's one of the reasons for prohibition. The publicans, where the pubs were meeting places for people to talk about radical politics. And, well, we're going to have to shut these people down. Most of them are Irish American, by the way. That was the real political move against that. So we as Americans are going to have to rediscover the public square. I'm looking forward to it.
and look out for the Irish. You know,
With oh man, yeah, RFK Jr. I wish him the best of luck, Godspeed. And I'm going to have to check out that one thinker that you're talking about. I think he's onto something because, as you heard me before, I think the biggest threat to America is not the Chinese, the Chicoms, or the Vatican. And it probably holds true for Mother Russia as well. I think the biggest threat is the Gnostic
yeah,
philosophical currents.
yeah, I,
This is a person, Eleanor Roerich, her husband Nicholas Roerich. He's the
mhm,
guy supposedly influenced Henry Wallace to convince Roosevelt to put the Illuminati seal on the dollar bill. All right, that's that whole circle. So these are the occultic, and then we have the sexy Nazis, Maria Orsich, right? But she's not mentioned as part of paperclip. And of course, science fiction, which I think is really got the younger LARPers, the ones who are in the video game world, who are not in the public square. They're live action role players, right?
yeah.
Those are the people I'm trying to reach. And you've been mentoring someone who can probably reach them. His name is Detroit David Cranmer Underdown. He's in that video game
Oh no, I don't.
cohort, that generation. So I have great hope there'll be people like him who are going to pick up where you and me geezers so that
You,
that he
you
can
know,
take it forward.
the thing is, Daryl. You know, I guess I think of these video games as kind of like pot or I guess drinking or whatever else that young people do when they
Mhm.
are getting together, but they don't really have an agenda. They're not doing anything, and so they're passing the time, and they get the adrenaline rush, and that's kind of addictive, right? And then you get that, you win the game, and you get that buzz of adrenaline, or everything is like they made the games so that you would be hooked on the games, just
Mhm.
like drugs are like made so that you get hooked on drugs. And that uh, vulnerability, I think, is not really as strong as we give it credit. What's the problem is that there's no alternatives out there for young people, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing that I would think, a 17, 18, 20-year-old kid would really look into our culture and say, "I wanna be part of that," you know?
Mhm.
And that, the lack of something positive that can be exciting, you know? Like, I remember how exciting it was as a Boy Scout to do this orienteering thing where you had to just have they gave you a compass and said, "Here, you gotta get from this to this to this to this," and using a compass and your own, ability to figure out angles and directions and things like that, and, those kind of things that engage the mind.
Mhm.
Astronomy, if kids could if there was a major, program to get kids invested in astronomy, all kinds of things. It's not just sports. Sports, okay, I'll give you sports. They do a lot of sports, but in terms of engaging the mind with things, and professional things you can make money at. Uh,
Mhm.
the idea of going into a trade, yeah, I love it because you're going to make some good money, and you don't have to have a student loan. I like that idea for now for practical purposes, but why couldn't we have some real Renaissance thinkers getting developed? Where does a Machiavelli, I mean, where does a Leonardo da Vinci come from, except for he was a kid once, and
Mhm.
somehow his brain, was allowed to develop in an amazing way, and now we look at him as one of the greatest thinkers that ever was. Well, what if he hadn't had a mentor? What if he hadn't
Yeah.
lived in the place where he lived? All of this stuff is an indictment of our society, in that we've allowed this status to happen. And I do believe that, legal or illegal, that drugs are not as seductive as people think they are, except for that there's a lack of interesting things for people to do, interesting things for young people to do, and so much of this
Mhm.
culture is just BS, and they see it. They know it's all BS. Come on,
Yeah. I
and it,
think there are a lot of younger people who are picking up on that. You know why? Because I watch a lot of TubeU, obviously, maybe too much, but I see a lot of people who are millennial and younger who are very much interested in geezer culture. That's what I call you and me, geezer culture. Uh,
no,
really, yeah, yacht rock or dad rock. I mean, they're like 20 years old and they want to go out and play out. I mean, live. They want to play Steely Dan tunes and all that. And because I think they're beginning to recognize that they've been shunted off from the authentic, if I may say so, right? The real music making, not the preset music that's being sold to us, right? So I hold out hope for that. Um, I just these, I want to see these opportunities unfold for younger people,
now
and the
here's
schools especially.
here's an idea in the chat room, and I see Jansen Brown saying, John, kids still do scouting. Kids, you just don't. You're not in those circles. You don't see it. Okay, fair
Yeah,
enough. But somebody who else was this? Says, oh, Pop. No, Prester John says Osprey culture, and I think there. Now that's what I've been talking about. Is what if kids got interested in doing compound searches on Google? You
yeah,
know, and
yeah,
say, like what we do, we say, what was Douglas MacArthur ever in the same room with Sun Yat-sen? You know, is that an important question? Why is it important? I don't know. Put it in there, put it in quotes, put "and" between it, and see what you get. And if you start running something, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if he knew the Sung sisters, and I wonder if wow, maybe he knew about
Wow.
the dope trade. I wonder, and but that kind of thinking of that happens to me when I start chasing these rabbit holes. I think that's what I'm talking about. Stimulate the mind,
Yeah.
but do it in a way that's going to help the world by uncovering the truth behind these crazy medical things that have been happening to us in the past 3 years, to uncover the truth behind what's real policy of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and to recognize when our government is being subverted and taken away from us and corrupted and turned into an organized crime organization, that we have an opportunity to save it and a duty to stand up and save it, to preserve, protect, and defend our Constitution before it's gone. And, you know, when its bottom line is, Professor, that's what our business is. Would you not agree?
I agree with you completely. Before we conclude, I forgot to mention in my haste that another polonium 12 victim at a world historical level was Yasser Arafat,
Oh, okay.
2004.
Mm-hmm.
It was being denied up and down. He died in a French hospital, so they're going to not cover it up, or they're going to cover it up. But independent inquiries that have been these
Yeah.
articles have been published in the Lancet in academic science journals, based on forensic evidence saying, yeah, he's a polonium 12 person. The reason I keep hammering it that because that's going to be one of the chief fallouts of what's going on in Russia, Ukraine over the past few days. Polonium
Okay.
12. Yeah,
All
we'll
right.
know. We'll be
Keep an
able
eye
to
out.
figure it out more quickly.
The suddenly disappeared.
Yeah, the sudden, cancer victims. Right.
Yeah.
It's gonna make the Bob Marley situation look, like, really primitive. If you look in the pictures, Litvinenko, he's completely bald, has no hair, no eyebrows.
Oh,
He
yeah.
looked advanced cancer within a very short time, and they did not blame the, ducks at Wuhan or the sushi in the Paris restaurant. They said, "No, it's probably polonium 12."
Yeah. I mean, I, as long as you bring it up, there's a picture of him right there
Yes,
in the
yes.
Wikipedia. A terrible way to go.
Right, and the hand of Putin might have been there. I'm not saying it was or wasn't, but that was the buzz going on at the time. So I've been looking at this, quite a while. Putin and that whole ring of people, the oligarchs, and
Well, who killed Dugina? Who killed Alexandra Dugin's daughter? There's
right,
a,
yeah,
it sure does look like somebody on the NATO or Ukrainian team. But how
yeah,
do you prove things like that? But
yeah.
yeah, once assassinations start, it's the
Mhm.
Hatfields and McCoys, right?
The bodies will begin to mount. I think the
Yeah,
assassination of Jugin's daughter was probably the beginning of a long-term gang warfare between the various factions.
yeah. I would
I'm
I would
afraid.
think
Yeah,
agree with you.
that's
All
my
right.
own
Well,
feelings of you
so
too.
many things we're going to have to leave till the next time, Professor. Thanks for joining me tonight.
You're quite welcome. Thanks again, John, for having me as a guest on your show.
All right, Professor Hamamoto on YouTube. He's on there once a week now, and make sure and check out all of his great work over at his YouTube channel. Good night, everybody.